Well, first of all, what matters here is that people have been affected, the fires. I'm not going to speculate about what might have happened or what might have been different. Let's be direct here. This is not about politics. This is about the fact that we've had an unprecedented scale of fires. We're seeing weather records tumble. We're seeing the cities blanketed in smoke. It is unthinkable for people living in the cities of Australia that we've now got some of the worst air quality in the world. But what really matters is that 28 plus people have lost their lives, that businesses are dislocated, people are unemployed. It is not a matter of the election. It is a matter of having the best possible response in the short term. My job now as Anthony's government services spokesperson, my gaze is not focused on what could have happened in the election. It is focused on the long journey of recovery. Like, what we've got to recognise is if the flames are getting less, that's a great thing. But for some people and some communities, it's going to take not months but years to recover. That's what they need from their political representatives, fair income representation, not politics.
More broadly, have the fires changed public opinion on climate change? And I guess the question for both of you, do you think public opinion is more receptive to taking action on climate change?
Look, I wrote Labor's policy in 2006. Labor has had a strong policy on climate change we've taken to every election. We do that not out of some assessment of the polls. We do that because it's the right thing to do and because it's a responsible thing to do. And we've argued that consistently. At times, some might argue that we've suffered because of it. But it's the right thing to do. We will continue to do that, to put forward the case. I think one of the differences, to go to your last question, is we had a difficult result last May. We've moved on. We're looking forward. We've been constructive in our suggestions to the government and have been so throughout this crisis. The government has been on a victory lap since May. Complacent. Go and have a look at the quotes which are there, because you'll hear them in coming weeks in Parliament from the government. We've had natural disasters before. We've been through this before. We'll go through it again. The sort of statements that were made reflected an absolute complacency, in spite of the very clear warnings that were given by the fire chiefs, who the Prime Minister still hasn't met with, by scientists. The predictions were all there, just as now the predictions are still saying, and we hope there is a turn in the weather in coming days, but they're still saying that it is likely that this season has got a considerable period to go, and we need to continue to be vigilant on that.
You asked me what my view was. 100% agree with Anthony. One thing I have noticed, travelling around Victoria, people don't stop me and say, what is the cost of acting on climate change? People now, right across Australia, say, what is the cost of not acting on climate change?
That's right.
Just a question on the future of the submarine project, because how concerned are you about the future of that, given it's 9 months behind schedule and Defence hasn't said if can't say the $400 billion will be effective?
The government's complacent. Most things that they have are behind schedule. This is a government that received a Senate report at the beginning of last year about support for volunteers and how that would impact. Hasn't bothered to respond. This is a government that received a report in July of 2018 about the impact of bushfires and what might happen, and which was due to have an implementation report in 2019, and it still hasn't happened. That's my concern about the government having a Royal Commission, which I've said my concern is that they'll use that as an excuse to say, oh, well, that's been dealt with in the Royal Commission, when we actually know a whole range of things that are required right now. We have reports. This government commissions report after report after report. What they don't do is act on them.